Help support AMTV by becoming a patron, an AMTV staff member, and following us over on Twitter. Hi there guys, it's Adam Martyn here, and welcome back to another edition of the Sunday Catch-Up. A bit of a belated Sunday Catch-Up, I do apologise for that. This was meant to be putting out to you guys on New Year's Day 2023, but unfortunately I didn't have the time to get round to it, so alas, we are getting it a week late, but it's still here. I'm back ready to answer your questions. But before we get into that, just a bit about life and generally what's going on. December was a very busy month for me, but mainly with my regular job, my day job if you like. It's the busiest time of the year for us. I was in there pretty much nearly every day, sometimes pulling 12-hour days, so very tiring, but I got through it because I have a great team around me. The job is generally fun to do, so yeah, it was a good time, a stressful time, but a good time nonetheless. In terms of acting, you might have seen the video where it finally got revealed that I'm going to be in Doctor Who on audio with Big Finish, with the Ninth Doctor himself, Christopher Eccleston. That adventure is going to be out in February. I already did a whole video sort of revealing this, so if you haven't seen that, definitely go and check that out, because that's really exciting. I can't wait for you all to hear that come February. And 2023, the early days anyway, yeah, just always looking for more acting gigs, all that sort of stuff. Obviously trying to make new content as well, not just for 2, but for 3 channels now. Again, if you missed it, we recently launched AMTV Who, which is going to be the one-stop shop for all of my future Doctor Who content. I've had some people asking me, will all your old Doctor Who videos be removed from this channel and put on there? I don't think so, partly because I think there's way more of them than there ever was of the Now Review, because that's what I'm going to do with the Now Review. But also, I think, it's easy enough these days to link between channels and, find content on one or the other, and I'll always be linking back to it anyway. So all future Doctor Who content is going to be on AMTV Who, that's for sure. So if you haven't done it already, please go over there, hit subscribe. If you're a Doctor Who fan and you're particularly interested in the videos, put the notifications on. But even if you're not, please feel free to subscribe. Don't put the notifications on. You shouldn't be bothered by any obsessive notifications about it, but that'd be great. There's AMTV Now, of course, which is still pumping out the Now Review content. There is going to be phase 2 of the AMTV Now coming soon, actually, so keep your eyes open on that channel for a video on that. But I think that's all the major life updates, so now all that's left to be said, as always, is now it's time for your questions. So first of all, we've got Dipper, who says, how do you think 2023 is going to go? Well, let's put it this way. I hope it's a lot better than 2022. Maybe that's a bit unfair. 2022 was a decent year in many respects, like there were a lot of positive moments, but I also feel there were a lot of negative ones as well, or a lot of things that I wasn't personally happy with, so I hope this one's a belter. Kyle Wright says, do you know that the Smiler crash at Alton Towers was caused by human error? Yes, I was aware of that. I actually remember that being reported on the news. It was 2015, wasn't it? I was in my first year of university coming to the end, and I remember we saw that on the news. We were very shocked. Fair Rod the Capacitor says, I want to hear your opinions on stings and bumpers. I count them as idents, but as a lower division of idents. What would you count them as idents as well? Well, sort of. They have elements of idents, don't they? But I do think they are unique in their own entirety. But maybe a video on stings and bumpers is something to consider in the near future. Tom Mason says, have you ever seen Eurovision Choir? What, a separate thing? I don't think I have. I'd love to see Eurovision songs performed by a choir. I think that would be really cool, actually. Joseph Adam, there's 3 questions that we're just doing one question, so I'll pick one what I'm going to answer. So one I'm going to pick is, what is next Doctor Who Blu-ray set next year? I don't have a clue. I've got no insight into what's coming next. There's predictions, a lot of people are hoping for season 20 with the 5th Doctor. I've seen some rumblings of season 9 with the 3rd Doctor, but I've got no insight as to what it might be. Jake the Robo Nerd says, do you remember Deadly 60 and did you ever watch it? I do remember it being on, but I never watched it. I was never into those sorts of animal programs. That's no shade onto animals, but as a kid it just never really gripped me, if that makes sense. Robtastic Productions says, what is your favourite Sega Mega Drive game? That's a tough one. The original Sonic trilogy is obviously up there, but I actually really like the Sega Mega Drive version of Toy Story, the original Toy Story game that came out, because not only was it a technical feat for the Sega Mega Drive to do that, but it's actually a really fun game as well, so I'd probably say that. SAE 801 TV says, what is your favourite BFDI character? BFDI? Ooh, unless I'm missing an obvious acronym, I don't know what that means, I'm afraid. BFDI, what? No, sorry, I'm not quite sure what that... Maybe it's really obvious, I bet, isn't it? But I'm really sorry, but not springing out to me what BFDI is. Joey Clark says, do you think a Channel 6, like Channel 4 and 5, will ever be launched in the UK? I don't think so, not terrestrially anyway. I think that era's long gone. You know, Channel 5 was still launched in the era of analog TV, and there's so much choice now. I just don't think a Channel 6, what would it broadcast? What kind of programming? Would it have any original programming? Is it all like pre-existing content. I just don't think there's a market for it. Dr. Master says, do you think Power of the Doctor would have worked better as a body swap story? Sasha would have made a really interesting Doctor, in my opinion, as him in real life gives massive Doctor vibes in his personality and outfits, and it would have been nice to see Jodie play an evil character, and her in red gives massive Master vibes. I mean, yeah, that's fair enough. A body swap thing could have been cool. I was fairly happy with what they actually did, and it makes sense that the Master would want to get rid of the Doctor completely rather than swap her personality, say, into his body or vice versa or whatever. So, it's an interesting idea, but I'm happy with what we got. Moves22 Allsworth says, will you watch the Matilda musical movie? Yes, I already did. I went to the cinema to see it with my partner Rebecca, and we really enjoyed it. I will always have a big soft spot for the original 90s Danny DeVito movie, because that's what I grew up on. But obviously the musical, I believe, is a bit truer to the book in some forms, and I haven't seen the stage version, but I did really enjoy the film. Doctor Who's Magical Entertainment says, do you think they should make a musical episode of Doctor Who? It'd be great to see the Doctor and co burst into song. That would be a fun idea. I don't know whether sustaining that for a whole 45-minute minimum episode would work. Maybe as like a fun skit for 5 or 10 minutes, that'd be quite cool. I'd be all up for that, but somehow I don't think they'll actually ever do that as a full episode, but if they did, fair play. Paul Kelly says, what is your favourite Doctor Who missing episodes animation? Out of the ones we've got, do you know what? I really enjoyed the first one, The Invasion. That was done by Cosgrove Hall, and I don't know, there's a certain charm about that animation style, if you ask me, but in terms of the more recent ones, The Evil of the Daleks was just superb. Roger Darthwell says, why is everybody leaving Twitter all of a sudden? I think it's to do with the fact that Elon Musk runs it now, and, you know, a lot of the staff were either fired or left of their own accord. Things seem to have, like, stabilised now or calmed down a bit, but I know that's why a lot of people were jumping ship. Viper says, what are your thoughts and opinions on the new Marvel film, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever? I haven't seen it. I've been really bad this phase. I don't know what it is after Endgame, because that felt like such a big ending to the Infinity Saga, which it was. I've just not had that same drive to watch MCU shows or films anymore. It's such a shame, really. TKF says, what is your favourite album from 2020 so far? Do you mean the 2020s, as in like the decade? If so, I mean, it's got to be Eurovision. The fact we get a now Eurovision album is incredible. Ribbleye says, did you know that someone did a death metal version of Frozen Let It Go on Britain's Got Talent and upset Amanda Holden one time? I didn't see that. I can believe that went on Britain's Got Talent. Don't know why it would have upset Amanda Holden. I mean, it's just a cover, but I haven't watched Britain's Got Talent in over a decade at least. Squall Rowlandson says, my new question is, have you seen Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, the movie from 1998? Because you have. If that's the one that's poor, like very bad CGI about the Island of Misfit Toys, then yes, I did have that on VHS as a kid, but if it's not that one, then probably not. The Kyle John 1 says, do you know that Dennis Skinner used to call the Queen Queenie? I didn't, but I do now. My question is, what kind of approach do you think BBC, ITV and other channels will take this Christmas? I guess that's the only disadvantage of doing these monthly, isn't it? I have done videos on the schedules for all of the main terrestrial channels at least, so you can definitely go and check those out if you missed them. But I think it was a mix. Some channels, I think Channel 5's was a stroke of genius, but some channels left a lot to be desired, in my opinion, particularly like BBC 2, 3, 4. But it's, you know, it's all everyone's opinion. No one was ever going to be completely satisfied with the lineup. Joey says, what do you think CITV will do for their 40th birthday this year? Of course, they turn 40. It'd be cool for them to show, at least at some point in the year, like some retro programming, if they've still got access to it, maybe some stuff from the 80s. I know current kids, some would argue they might not be into that anymore, but I think you've got to honour it somehow, haven't you? Or at least like one special programme. Connor YT says, if AMTV had its own television channel, what programmes and type of idents would you air on the channel? That's a good question. Programmes, I mean, it'd be stuff I'm interested in, so probably a lot of history-based stuff, maybe some Doctor Who on there, so now that's what I call music. In terms of idents, I'd try and make ones that had all the best qualities of the ones I've reviewed over the years. You know, things that are engaging, things that are different, unique, or maybe familiar, but have a very charming aspect to them. That's what I'd try and go for. B says, my question, if it hasn't been asked yet, do you think the BBC will do some Eurovision-themed idents for when they host it next year? I really hope they do. I think they'd be missing a massive trick not to. I see special idents in sets, especially from the BBC, tend to come a bit less frequently than they used to, but I think the fact that we rarely get Eurovision in the UK anymore, like hosted here, that would be such a great opportunity to do, and you could have a nice like collaboration between the UK themes and Ukraine themes as well, because they were the winners, of course, so I'm hoping for it. Joe W97 says, which Irene Cara song do you like best, Fame or Flashdance? What a feeling. Of course, she passed away a few months ago, very young as well. I prefer Flashdance. It's a more inspiring, more rousing song for me. Fame's alright, but Flashdance is the one for me. Max Jackson says, favourite movie version of Santa Claus? God, there's so many. I mean, the Tim Allen films, you know, The Santa Claus, I think that's what it's called, they're pretty top, aren't they? Super Remy Plush says, Running Fred or Skiing Fred? No, Fred. No Fred whatsoever. Billy says, if you got the chance to be the Doctor, where in time and space would you want to go first? Well, I've got a keen interest in history. I know they've revisited like the last 100 years or so I'd like to go a bit further back. Egyptian times visiting properly might be really cool, because that's always a period of history I like. Zachary Gatt says, do you listen to any song or album by Tyler, the Creator? Not really. I do know who Tyler, the Creator is, and I know they've had a lot of critical praise for some of their albums, but I've listened to some of their stuff. It's not really my field, not rap as such. His style of rap isn't really for me, but fair play to him. He's got a good fan base behind him. Ben Williamson, okay, you've asked 3 questions. Remember, it's 1 question per video, so I'm going to pick one. Let's go with, will AMTV Radio come back? The podcast, yeah, I'd love to bring it back. It's now been over a year since we've had an episode. I would love to bring AMTV Radio back. There's a few factors hindering it, though. One of them being that, when I did AMTV Radio, it was at the height of the pandemic, so I had a lot more time. My guests had a lot more time to dedicate to come on the podcast and talk. It's still possible now, but I'd argue it's a lot trickier scheduling, and I'd want to pre-do it all in advance, so I had a regular schedule and all that sort of stuff. So I do want to bring it back. I'm just not sure when it will be, unfortunately. Rebecca Fithian says, do you have any New Year's resolutions for 2023? I don't really. I used to do resolutions a very long time ago, but I always had trouble keeping to them. You sort of feel pressured by your own resolutions sometimes, but it's not as much a resolution, but, I just want to go forth, be happy, do what I want to do. All that sort of stuff, really. So I guess that's as good a resolution as any. BR and GWR Trainiac Productions says, are there any other game shows you enjoy besides Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? There's maybe 1 or 2. I don't really go out of my way to watch any other game shows, really. But, The Chase is all right when it's on. The Weakest Link back in the day, I think it's softened a bit too much now. But, yeah, there's a few. Susie Sunshine 2000, your first thing is detailing about my tribute to Jason David Frank and how you really enjoyed it. I mean, thank you very much. Still a big loss to the Power Rangers community, losing Jason David Frank there. Your actual question is, do you think Channel 4 should get a new logo, or do you think it's for the better that they've kept the same logo since 1982? I think at this point it's good that they keep the same motif of it, the sort of block structure, because that is, you see that image and you know that's Channel 4. People, not just in the UK, around the world, know that's Channel 4. So I think keeping that central bit of iconography, and it's timeless as well. It's lasted 4 decades already, and I'd argue it's not really become dated at all, which is amazing for a bit of 80s design. So yeah, I think keep with it. Tim Goodwin says, did you watch the Women's Euro 2022? I didn't watch all of it. I did catch the final, though, where the Lionesses did ascend to victory and, managed to achieve what the men have failed to achieve for over 55 years now. Ben Miller says, which villain would you like to see the 15th Doctor come across? That'd be Ncuti. Ooh, well, I'd like to see a lot of new villains in his first season, at least. I don't want a big reliance on old villains to start with. I think a lot of new villains. Something quirky, I think. Something quirky and different. Maybe a bit left field. I think that'd work great for Ncuti. Chuckle Fun says, great video. What is the most strange and weird TV ident you have seen? Probably some of the Bravo stuff. One of the earliest episodes of the ident review was looking at some Bravo idents from the late 90s, and they were kind of horror themed, but God, those things were weird, man. Really, really weird. David Doom says, could you do a documentary about the Tweenies' musical career in the same sort of style as the one I did on Bob the Builder? I've got to be honest, I didn't really know the Tweenies had a musical career, but hey, if they do, maybe I got to research that and make a video on it, because doing the Bob the Builder episode was actually really, really fun. So yeah, maybe something on the Tweenies could come soon. It's Takeover Time, 1992, Do It Wrong returns. What are you guys with these long names, man? Here's a question for the Sunday catch-up. Will you do a full album review on Pop Party 2? You've been listening, eh? My very first CD that I ever got when I was a kid. I would do, but I mean, 3 of you would watch it? So I just don't... Maybe it'll go up on AMTV now at some point, but I've got no immediate plans to do that review. Zord's Spare Channel says, what do you think your least favourite ident is? I think I've said it before, just things that are bland, things that don't tell you anything about a channel, things that are lazy, cobbled together. It's more like the qualities of an ident that are my least favourite. I don't have one that immediately springs to mind. Frontios101 says, greetings, which franchise would you like to cross over with Doctor Who in the future? For me, it'd be the various tokusatsu franchises from Japan. I'm with you on that one. So basically, if Doctor Who crossed over with Power Rangers and such like that, I think that'd actually be a really cool collaboration. And you laugh, but I actually think there's room for some great potential there. That would actually be my top of the list of crossovers. Bring it on, Doctor Who and Power Rangers, let's go. Kyle JB Awesomeness 2001 says, well, you've asked 2 questions, so we are just going to do 1 because it's 1 question per video, of course. I'll go with, if there is one classic UK show you feel like it wouldn't make a good reboot, which one would it be and why? Ooh, well, probably some of the stuff from the 60s and 70s, like comedies where their humour was just so outrageous that it wouldn't be acceptable now. I just think a lot of shows like that are very much rooted like in their time, or things that are very much of their time. In terms of rebooting them, I think you just lose so much of like what made that show special, to be honest. LJA says, will you change the AMTV channel intro? For example, a parody of Good Morning Britain where you use Good Morning ATV. I do not like the Good Morning Britain This Morning like intros. I think they're really bland, really boring and lazy. I kind of like it as it is, simple yet effective. Time Lord Master 108 says, did you see that the Sarah Jane Adventures has been added to the iPlayer? It makes you wonder if the BBC are eventually going to put out all their content from BritBox on the iPlayer, since it was previously on there. It is cool because it gives people a chance to rewatch the Sarah Jane Adventures and also introduce it to a whole new generation. I actually recently picked up the whole series on DVD finally. There's that box set that's been out for about a decade. I finally got round to grabbing it because I just like having stuff on physical media, because even though it's on a streaming hub, you never know how long these things are going to last. Mandma Official says, when is A Brief History returning? I think in terms of that name, A Brief History, I don't think that name's returning as such. I think the documentaries, I want them to sort of stand on their own now. You know, I don't want them to always have that moniker, and that's what I've been doing over the last year. So yeah, I don't think the moniker A Brief History will return, but the documentaries or the history videos will be coming back. You know, they're sticking around. James Delaney says, do you remember in Doctor Who when Billie Piper was his... You've put assailant. I'm pretty sure she wasn't his assailant. I think you meant assistant, right? Yeah, I do. It's what got me into the show. Jeff Davies says, did you know that Justin Bieber beats his mother up? Do you know what, Jeff? Somehow I don't think he does. Gamerman Gaming YT says, I'm a bit late, but here's the question. Have you listened to any already announced Eurovision songs? No, I tend to listen to the Eurovision songs for the year now just before the semi-finals kick off, or during the semi-finals themselves when they go through them all. That's not because I'm intentionally avoiding it. That's just when I end up catching them. They don't tend to play the songs of other countries on the radio, not at least until like we get to Eurovision week. So yeah. And finally, Outside Inside says, out of every Doctor Who collection Blu-ray released, which would you say is your personal favourite? Well, I did love the season 24 set because that's a season that never really got much love, but now it is sort of getting reappraisal, so I'm glad that that's finally getting the respect it deserves. The season 26 set as well, the final one of the classic series, that's a beautiful set. Season 2, you know, that our first 60s box set was lovingly done. Recently did an unboxing of that as well if you want to check that out. So I don't have a personal favourite, but there's certain ones where I think the attention to detail for seasons that either didn't get much love or have a historical significance is great. And those are all your questions. Thank you so much for asking them as always. So remember, if you have a question you want to ask me, leave me in the comments down below and I will answer them in the next Sunday catch-up. In terms of when the next one will be, obviously this one's a week late. I'm still planning on doing these at the end of every month. So instead of 4 weeks wait, you've only got 3 weeks wait. So instead of 4 weeks wait, you've only got 3 weeks wait. So the next one of these should arrive on Sunday, the 29th of January. So put that date in your calendar. So leave your questions down there below. Thank you so much for watching this. Again, if you enjoyed it, please leave a like on this video. Leave your questions down below. Subscribe to the channel if you're brand new. We'd love to have you aboard. If you're a Now fan, there's AMTV Now. You can go and subscribe over there. And if you're a Doctor Who fan, go and subscribe to the recently launched AMTV Who. On all 3 of these channels, we'd love to have you aboard. I've been Adam Martyn from AMTV. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Thank you to our patrons for helping to support the show, and a special thank you to Macra, Hooks Media, Ben Freeman, Ethan Carberry-Holt, Bruce Danton, The Broken Kitsumanoid, Tobias Krotz, Globe of Reviews, Trev Hughes, Derek Chambers, Sean Knock, Bailey Green, and DSTV New Zealand, our AMTV staff members.